All right, so we're going to be taking a deep dive into this really fascinating world you've been exploring.
Okay.
You've given us this really interesting mix of articles and research, and it all kind of focuses on literacy in our digital world.
Hmm.
And it seems like you're really interested in how education needs to change and adapt to keep up with all this tech.
Yeah, definitely a very important topic.
Hmm.
And what your sources are really emphasizing is that we're talking about like a fundamental shift in what it means to be literate, like in the 21st century.
Right.
It's not just about adding some, tech skills on top of like traditional reading and writing.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too.
Yeah.
One of the articles, Digital Literacy and Education, really pushes back against this idea of digital literacy being a separate skill set.
Hmm.
It's arguing that digital literacy is now woven into like all literacy.
Exactly. That's like a key takeaway.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
think about it. We're constantly just bombarded with information online,
Mm.
and being able to sort through all that, figuring out what's credible and what's not, that's literacy in action.
Mm.
And it's not just about being like a savvy consumer of information. It's about producing it as well.
Right. Like, how do you even like have a respectful debate online these days
Right?
between the echo chambers and then all this internet slang that's like always changed, like a whole new communication game.
It is. And, uh, your sources highlight that this is impacting everything from how we form relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like dating apps and online communities
Yeah.
to how we engage in political and social discourse.
Oh, yeah. The dating app example really stuck with me. It's in that digital literacy and education
Mhm.
article. And it made me realize like just how much these changes are impacting our everyday lives.
It's not just some abstract concept happening in classrooms.
Right.
It's changing how we connect, learn, even like find love.
Wow.
And what makes this even more challenging is that it's not a static situation.
Mm.
Technology and how we use it are constantly evolving.
So if digital literacy is like the new literacy, then where does that leave teachers?
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of your sources were really focusing on the role of educators in this shifting landscape.
Yeah. They're like on the front lines, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing that your sources really emphasize is that teachers need to be more than just like subject matter experts.
Okay.
They need to become adaptable learners themselves,
Huh.
constantly updating their knowledge and practices,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to technology.
Oh, it's so interesting because one source compared this to building a skyscraper.
Right.
It was arguing that just like you don't build a skyscraper in a day,
Yeah.
developing these new literacies and addressing social justice issues in education is an ongoing process. There's no easy fix.
Such a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it kind of underscores the need for like a shift in mindset,
Right.
both for teachers and like how we think about education as a whole.
Okay.
It's not about reaching like a fixed end point. It's about embracing like a continuous process of learning and adaptation.
So it's less about finding like the right answers and more about asking the right questions.
Precisely. And that ties into another key takeaway from your sources,
Okay.
the need for collaboration between schools and communities.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers can learn so much from parents, community members, and different social groups
Yeah.
to like get a better grasp of the challenges that students are facing.
There was this one quote from one of the articles that really stood out to me. It
Yeah.
said, teachers need to learn from the communities to address the changes in the classroom.
Right.
It's a good reminder that education doesn't exist in like isolation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by like understanding the different ways that language and communication are being used outside the classroom,
Right.
educators can better connect with their students and create a more relevant and engaging learning experience.
And that makes me think of the concept of urban literacies.
Yeah.
One of the sources brought up. It's talking about how young people are using language in their everyday lives.
Right.
Think about like slang memes, online communities.
Yeah, it's a form of literacy that's often overlooked or even dismissed.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly relevant to how young people are making sense of the world and expressing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one article even dives into how this type of literacy can like vary across different social groups and communities.
Right.
So it adds like another layer of complexity.
It makes you wonder how educators can bridge the gap between these like urban literacies and what's traditionally considered academic literacy.
Yeah.
Like, can they even coexist?
That's a big question your sources are wrestling with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely something that we'll dig into further as we continue our deep dive.
Okay.
But before we do that, I'm curious, what stood out to you so far?
Hmm.
What's sparking your curiosity?
As we're talking about bridging these different types of literacy, I keep thinking about the digital literacy in education article.
Yeah.
It highlights this really interesting concept. It's called linguistic flexibility.
Yeah, that's a crucial concept.
Yeah.
And it really gets at like the heart of what it means to be literate in like a digital world.
Right.
Your sources suggest that like instead of trying to force students to conform to one narrow definition of like correct language,
Right.
educators should embrace like the diversity of their students' linguistic backgrounds and experiences.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider how much language is constantly evolving online.
Right.
What might seem like a grammatical error to one person could be like a deliberate stylistic choice to someone else,
Exactly.
or like a reflection of a specific cultural context.
Absolutely. And your sources emphasize that like by recognizing and valuing these diverse forms of expression,
Right.
educators can create a more inclusive and engaging learning environment
Mm-hmm.
where students feel comfortable sharing their ideas and perspectives.
And this goes back to the need for teachers to be like adaptable learners themselves. If language and communication are constantly changing online, teachers need to be open to learning from their students and from the communities they serve.
Exactly. One of your sources even suggests that like teachers can learn a great deal from like observing how young people use language in online spaces,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to things like understanding online slang, decoding memes,
Right.
and like navigating the nuances of online communities.
It's almost like teachers need to become like anthropologists of digital culture,
Yeah.
constantly observing and analyzing how language is being used and adapted in these new contexts.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
And this kind of like anthropological approach
Mm-hmm.
could also be incredibly helpful in understanding how digital literacy skills can vary across different social groups and communities.
Right, because access to technology isn't equal,
Right.
and neither is the ability to navigate the online world safely and effectively.
Exactly. Some of your sources even touch on the idea that like existing social inequalities can be amplified in digital spaces.
Oh, wow.
For example, students from under-resourced communities might not have the same access to high-speed internet or the latest devices,
Right.
which can put them at a disadvantage when it comes to developing digital literacy skills.
So how do we address these issues
Yeah.
and ensure that all students have the opportunity to develop the digital literacy skills they need to thrive in the 21st century?
Well, your sources offer several suggestions,
Okay.
many of which focus on the need for more equitable access to technology and digital literacy education.
Mm-hmm.
Some argue for increased funding for technology in schools, particularly in under-resourced communities,
Right.
while others advocate for professional development programs to help teachers better integrate technology and digital literacy concepts into their teaching practices.
I'm also seeing a lot of emphasis on project-based learning,
Yeah,
which allows students to apply their digital literacy skills in authentic contexts.
that's a great point. And your sources offer some really compelling examples. For instance, one article describes a project where students use digital tools to research and create a documentary about a local social justice issue.
Wow.
And through this project, students not only learned about the issue itself,
Mm-hmm.
but also developed valuable digital literacy skills like research, multimedia storytelling, and online collaboration.
It sounds like this type of project-based learning can be a really powerful way to engage students,
Yeah,
make learning relevant to their lives,
absolutely.
and help them see the real-world applications of digital literacy skills.
Absolutely. And it also allows teachers to tailor their instruction to the specific needs and interests of their students,
Mm.
which can be incredibly valuable in addressing issues of equity and access.
Another thing that struck me in the Literacy in the Digital Age article is this emphasis on encouraging students to engage in critical reflection
Right.
on their own learning process.
That's a crucial aspect of developing digital literacy skills.
Yeah.
And your sources suggest that writing can be a particularly powerful tool for self-discovery and growth in this context. For example, students could be asked to write blog posts reflecting on our online research process,
Interesting.
create multimedia presentations, analyzing the credibility of different online sources,
Mm.
or even engage in like online discussions with peers to debate different perspectives on a current event.
So it's not just about using technology, it's about using technology in a thoughtful and reflective way.
Right.
And it seems like this type of reflective practice can also help students develop a stronger sense of agency and ownership over their learning.
Right. By encouraging students to think critically about their own online experiences, analyze their own biases,
Yeah.
and evaluate the credibility of the information they encounter.
Mhm.
educators can help them become more informed and discerning digital citizens.
This brings us to a really important question.
Okay.
While all this is incredibly relevant to education, what about the average person who isn't a teacher or a student?
Right.
Why should they care about this evolving concept of literacy in a digital world?
That's a question all of your sources grapple with.
Yeah.
And the answer, I think, is that these changes are impacting all of us, regardless of our age or profession.
Right.
Think about it, the way we communicate, the way we consume information, the way we form opinions and make decisions. All of these things are being shaped by the digital landscape.
Yeah, it's true. Whether we're scrolling through social media, reading news articles online, or even just trying to figure out which restaurant to order takeout from,
Right.
we're constantly engaging with the digital world and relying on our digital literacy skills to navigate it effectively.
Exactly. And as the digital landscape continues to evolve at an ever-increasing pace,
Right.
the need for these skills will only become more critical. So like understanding the complexities of digital literacy isn't just an academic exercise.
Yeah.
It's about becoming more informed, more critical, and more engaged citizens in a world that's increasingly mediated by technology.
So what can we do?
Yeah.
There's this sense of urgency in a lot of these sources, like a call to action for all of us to step up and play a role in shaping the future of literacy.
Absolutely. And your sources offer some compelling ideas.
Yeah.
For instance, one article suggests that parents can play a vital role in fostering digital literacy skills in their children by setting healthy limits on screen time, engaging in conversations about online safety and etiquette,
Right.
and like modeling responsible online behavior.
I'm also seeing a lot of emphasis on the need for media literacy education.
Yes, that's a key point.
Oh.
Several of your sources argue that media literacy skills,
Okay.
like the ability to critically evaluate online information, identify bias, and understand how algorithms and platform design can shape our online experiences,
Right.
should be integrated into the curriculum at all levels of education,
Wow.
from elementary school to college and beyond.
It makes sense. It's like we need to equip everyone with the tools they need to be savvy and responsible digital citizens.
Exactly. And your sources also highlight the role of policymakers in creating regulations and guidelines that promote ethical and responsible use of technology, particularly when it comes to things like data privacy, online safety, and the spread of misinformation.
It sounds like there's like a shared responsibility here.
Yeah,
We all have a role to play in ensuring that the digital world is a space where everyone can thrive
absolutely.
and where literacy skills are valued and cultivated.
Now, as we move into our final segment, I'd like to leave you with this question to consider.
Okay.
How do you think the evolving concept of literacy will impact our understanding of intelligence and success in the future? Will the ability to co-design algorithms or navigate complex online platforms become as valued as traditional literacy skills like reading, writing, and critical thinking?
Wow. Yeah, that's a really thought-provoking question as we head into this final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about how different skills might be valued in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely something to ponder. And it ties into a lot of what we've been discussing, how the digital world is reshaping not just how we communicate,
Right.
but also how we learn, work, and even think.
Yeah, one of the things that keeps coming up for me is this tension between like
Yeah.
the incredible opportunities the digital world presents, but also the potential pitfalls.
Right.
We've talked about like the need for critical thinking and media literacy skills,
Yeah.
but then there's like the emotional and social side of things to consider too.
You're hitting on a really important point, and several of your sources touch on how, like, digital platforms
Right.
can sometimes amplify existing social inequalities.
Yeah.
And it's not just about access to technology either.
Right. It's also about the ability to navigate the online world safely and effectively.
Exactly.
Understanding like the nuances of online communication and just being aware of the potential for like misinformation and manipulation.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of digital citizenship becomes so vital. Your sources emphasize that it's not enough to simply teach students how to use technology.
Right.
We also need to help them develop the ethical awareness,
Yeah.
the critical thinking skills, and the empathy to be like responsible and engaged members of online communities.
One article even made the point that online spaces can be particularly challenging for like young people who
Yeah.
are still developing their social and emotional skills.
Right.
There's so much pressure to like present this perfect image,
Yeah.
deal with cyberbullying, and navigate these like complex social dynamics.
It's true. And this is why it's so important for parents, educators, and communities to work together to create a supportive environment
Hmm.
where young people feel safe to explore the digital world, you know,
Yeah.
learn from their mistakes and develop the resilience they need to thrive online.
It makes me think about the role of mentorship in all of this. Like, young people need guidance and support from adults who understand, like,
Yep.
the challenges and opportunities of the digital world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that mentorship can come from a variety of sources.
Right.
Parents, teachers,
Yeah.
community leaders,
Yeah.
even older siblings or peers who have developed strong digital literacy skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating a network of support
Right.
where young people feel empowered to ask questions, seek guidance, and learn from the experiences of others.
Another theme that emerges from your sources is this importance of balance.
Yeah.
We've talked about like the potential pitfalls of the digital world,
Right.
but then there are also these incredible opportunities for creativity and learning.
You're right. And one article even suggests that instead of viewing the digital world as something separate from real life, we should think of it as an extension of our physical world.
Okay.
A space where we can build relationships, explore our interests, and contribute to our communities in meaningful ways.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It encourages us to like embrace the possibilities of the digital world
Mhm.
while also being mindful of the potential risks.
Exactly. And I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive into literacy in a digital world, the key takeaway for me is that it's an ongoing journey of learning adaptation and critical reflection.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be willing to embrace new ideas, challenge our assumptions, and work together to create a digital world that is equitably inclusive and empowering for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. And a huge thanks to you for joining us on this exploration.
Oh, of course.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, yes.
And I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on what it means to be literate in the 21st century.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what it means to be literate in an ever-evolving digital world.